Welcome to Next Gen Mentoring Forum. The Next Gen Mentoring Forum series is to empower, educate, and illuminate individuals who are interested in the financial planning profession. At each forum, an expert will discuss topics in the field of financial planning with the purpose of inspiring critical thoughts and discussion. Today, I have the honor to interview Sheena Parrish about why should CFP consider accredited financial counselor into their business model. My name is Dr. Chia-Li Jian. I am an assistant professor and director of the financial planning program at California Lutheran University. I maintain an active financial planning practice specializing in succession program management at Value Growth Institute. I author 3 award-winning books, most recent peer-reviewed research book published by Pelgrave Macmillan titled Enhancing Retirement Success Rate in the United States. Next Gen Mentoring Forum is sponsored by California Lutheran University School of Management Financial Planning Program. We offer MBA in financial planning that helps financial advisors pursue a leadership position or grow their financial planning practice by deploying advanced financial planning, effective client communication, counseling, streamlined practice management, as well as leveraging fintech. Today, I have the honor to interview Sheena Parrish. Sheena is a special program manager for the Association for Financial Counseling and Planning Education, or AFCPE. She manages grant funding projects and serves as a liaison for the AFCPE Register Education Program. And we're proud to say that CLU is one of your register education programs. She's focusing on the increasing engagement with college and university students. Sheena obtained her accredited financial counselor, or AFC certification, while working overseas for the U.S. Air Force as a Department of Defense civilian, providing financial counseling and education to members of the Air Force, of the Armed Forces. She has a bachelor in human ecology from the Ohio State University and a master of human relations from University of Oklahoma. Becoming an AFC allows her to combine her passion for helping professions with her interest in personal finance and financial wellness. So welcome to our mentoring session. So let me stop sharing for a moment here. So tell us about you. How did you come about the financial counseling field? And I'm most interested in how did you get involved in the Air Force or the military organizations, if you will?
Yeah, so I found myself living overseas in Germany, and I was in my mid-20s. I was 25 and was looking for work there. My husband is active duty Air Force, so that's what took us to Germany. I was looking for jobs on base and found a position at the Airmen and Family Readiness Center. So I'm kind of a helping professional at heart. So as a military spouse, I've dabbled in a number of different career fields just out of necessity with moving around over the years. Over the last 14 years, I think we've moved 7 times. So it's been a challenge career-wise, but when I got to Germany, I found a position at the Airmen and Family Readiness Center. Was fortunate to be hired, and then knew that one of the roles that I was going to have in that position was providing financial counseling and education. Like many people, I didn't really have a background in personal finance in terms of education that I'd received over the years, other than just personal experience, kind of values that were instilled in me from my family growing up. And so I knew this was going to be something I was going to need to do as a part of my role. And I had several colleagues who were very well versed, very knowledgeable, and I was more than happy to learn and have them mentor me and attend their presentations, observe their financial counseling sessions. But for me, that just kind of felt like I wanted to go the extra distance and get certified myself, because I felt that that would give me the confidence that I would need to really meet with people, and also um, so that's kind of how I found my way into financial counseling. It was sort of happenstance. I have a background in human services, and this was just sort of a newfound interest for me that started in my mid 20s, and still exists now, though I won't tell you how old I am now.
We all still look very young, so there's no worry there. And so when you started counseling, what was the path that you took to prepare for the AFC? And before we even get there, tell us exactly what did you do from a financial counseling perspective?
Well, I think some of the financial counseling things that you learn as you go through the AFC program, some of those things were natural to me as someone who's worked in human services. I've worked in social work with at-risk youth. I worked as an academic advisor at an art college. I've I felt that that was sort of an intrinsic talent that I had, but it was kind of nice to be able to learn the names for things that I might have already been doing that I didn't know from a counseling perspective. Kind of learn some of the approaches behind it that were a little bit more specific. So yeah, I started the AFC through the self-study pathway, which is the most common pathway. It's kind of designed for anybody, regardless of their educational background, regardless of their experience level. And this was back in 2009, I believe I started it, and I finished, or no, 2010, and I finished it in 2012. Main reason it took a while was to accumulate the experience hours required to hold the certification. There are 1,000 hours required. You do have a 2-year look back period when you register to become certified, but because I hadn't done anything related to financial counseling in previous work, other than maybe a little bit of financial advising at that art college on financial aid, I didn't have a lot of experience going in. So the bulk of the time that I was taking to earn the certification was to accumulate those hours of experience.
So
And I
does
was
that mean that for someone who is a CFP, when they go through this the path you mentioned, that's a self-study path, which basically, if you pass the exam, you will automatically have to, right? Because I'm assuming, because if you're a CFP, you already have an experience. Do you still need to accumulate that 1,000 hours of experience?
CFPs actually we have a unique pathway designed for people that already are credentialed in the field. The CFP is one of the designations that is recognized under that pathway. So somebody who already has the CFP could register under the professional designation challenge pathway and basically use their certification to fulfill the personal finance AFC core competencies. The remaining competencies around financial counseling and debt management could be fulfilled by participation in our webinar review sessions or through selecting those specific course materials, so that when the time comes to sit for the exam, they'll be fully prepared. About a little over 20% of the AFC exam is focused on those counseling skills.
Mhm.
So it makes sense to go through the process of preparing to ensure those that you'll be ready for those questions when they come on the test.
Right. I know that when we first discussed about how the CLU's program could prepare our students, even though at the time of the program design, we didn't have such course, but we are in the process of working with Sandra to develop that financial counseling course. Would you take us through because you have several different certification programs, and so would you talk a little bit of the difference between the financial counselor versus the financial coaching? Because I believe that you have 2 or 3 different type of certification. Would you be able to take us through what is the difference and which one is probably best for someone like myself or many of our students who are CFPs?
Yeah, so we have the AFC, the Accredited Financial Counselor designation. We have the AFC Canada, so that's for those who are living in Canada, and that's sort of a separate branch. And then the Financial Fitness Coach program is something that we worked on with Sandra Davis from Sage Financial Solutions, who I know you interviewed
Right,
for a recent Next Gen mentoring
right,
forum.
right.
And she manages that program specifically, but we have a lot of folks who might be AFCs and then end up going that route and building on their AFC by developing some coaching skills. The FCC, the Financial Fitness Coach program, focuses specifically on coaching skills. So the expectation for that program is that you come in with a financial foundation of knowledge. And for many of the people who pursue that designation, the AFC might serve as that financial foundation.
So the questions that I have is that as a CFP, all of us work with clients directly, and none of us are being trained to properly counsel clients or properly coaching clients. So what would you say in terms of benefits of having a certified financial planner or someone aspire to become one to take into consideration of factoring these 2 type of, I believe, a very, very crucial skill in terms of working with clients. So what can you help us understand? What are some of the benefits for doing that?
Well, I think something that I always kind of go back to is that personal finance is called personal for a reason. It's something that people sometimes have challenges talking about. They might have had personal experiences related to money in their past that were pretty unpleasant. Maybe the topic is really difficult. Maybe they're in a relationship or in a marriage where the topic of finance creates arguments, it creates stress. Maybe they only talk about finances when they're in trouble. If something comes up, which happens to us all, different times in our lives, financial issues arise. So I think that ability to really bring the human side to finance, it's not just numbers. While numbers are a very important component, you're sitting down with a person and they're telling you their their personal financial information, and there may be some underlying factors that you kind of need to be have your ears attuned to, or even just be able to visualize based on talking with them. So I think what the AFC brings to a person with like a CFP who already has a extensive personal finance background is it allows you to focus on building your skills on the more human side of personal finance.
And I totally agree. I think that even though, at least from my perspective, even though I wasn't properly trained in the counseling or coaching side, I just purely learned by mistakes. I remember early on when I first came into the industry, I had a nickname in around the practice, and that was I make wives cry. And I didn't know that until people told me that, because they felt comfortable of telling you, and there's so much stress in their finances, they didn't know how to begin. And then so ultimately one of the spouse will break down, and then so I can't talk about other things other than paying attention to what they're telling me. And that kind of was learn based on experience and learn based on mistake. But then last year I found a terminology which we're going to be talking about in about a month with a clinical psychiatrist, that she mentioned to me that oftentimes we unintentionally shaming our clients, even though that's not a topic we're going to talk about today. But I believe that if a CFP or someone who wants to become a CFP has learned how to coach, how to counsel. It might help avoiding things like that, because our job is not necessarily uh, judging. Judging is one thing, shaming is another thing. But there are just so many techniques beyond the numbers that you were just mentioning. So that's very comforting to hear from you, that there are always some extra soft skill, that I call it, that necessary to really work with the clients.
Yeah, I agree. I think what I love about this field is that it's one that you can just always continue to learn and grow. I did some webinar this morning with a bunch of um, military financial counselors, and it was on investing, and it's just there's just no limit to the amount of growing you can do, both in your personal finance knowledge and in just the way that you work with people. I think we always have to be self-assessing and figuring out, how we can best serve our clients, and whether that's spinning ourselves up on topics that we're not necessarily super familiar with, or talking about every day, that may be personal finance related, or if it's more just on some of our professional development that we'd like to do around the soft skills, around communication, listening, how how we're putting ourselves out there as professionals. I think that's one thing I just love about this field, is there's just always room to grow.
When you earlier, I wanted to circle back on one of the things that you mentioned regarding about when you started out in the military, basically servicing the members of the Air Force. There's also a program that is an employer sponsored program that employees could get financial counselor or counseling services within the military. My husband is not in the military, but I was happening to look at his open enrollment information yesterday, that there is one thing popping up, and that is that in their employer sponsor employee assistant program, if you will, one of the line items says that you could have unlimited amount of financial counseling in there. So my questions to you is, are those people who actually providing those kind of financial counseling, is AFC or FFC? Is that the case? I'm just curious, who are these people? Because certainly not CFP.
It's very possible. We have AFCs who are really working in a variety of capacities. So anywhere from how I started out working with the government, military in that sector, there are AFCs working as housing counselors, for nonprofit social service types of organizations. There are AFCs. We're seeing a trend in banks and credit unions investing in their employees, so that their employees are more knowledgeable about these topics, so they can better serve bank and credit union customers or members respectively. So and there's also a lot of AFCs who are interested in private practice and who are starting their own businesses. So there's a number of different things you can do, employee assistance programs. I think one of the challenges is that if you were to just search for financial counselor jobs, you might see a lot of jobs maybe in healthcare, maybe working in a hospital, helping people with their medical billing and things like that. But I think a lot of jobs you may not necessarily find under that job title of financial counselor. When I worked for the Air Force, I was a work-life specialist. That was my job title. I did financial counseling was one thing that I did, but it wasn't 100% of my duties. So I think financial counselors can be found in a variety of different job titles in a variety of different fields, but they may not always be termed as just specifically financial counselor.
So in terms of going back to, if a CFP has their own practice or working for somebody else, why should they consider having an AFC? And if they do that, how have you seen your AFC members or certificates, if you will, how do they structure their financial planning practice to include the counseling? Because this is one of those new revenue source, right? coming into the practice. And I'm assuming this is not subject to any kind of regulations. Is obviously, if you do include that in your practice, you do have to disclose it. So can you just share with us, in your experience, what have you seen other CFPs structure their practice to include the AFC as part of their service?
Yeah, I know we interviewed for our podcast just recently a CFP, AFC, dually certified individual, young, um, has his own private practice. And I think he, in the podcast, he was sharing how he kind of listed it out as one of his services. I think, and what he said is a lot of times people may not know when he's actually putting more of that counseling hat on as a client. They may not even realize that that's happening. But there are times where that hat is needed in a conversation based upon what's going on with that person. So I think what it allows CFPs to do is just broaden their reach, of who they can serve. Maybe maybe you have folks who are interested in reaching people that may not be really ready for certain services that you do provide. Maybe they're not at the investing level yet, or maybe they're just not there yet, and that's where the counseling can come in. How do we get you there? What do we need to do from a financial counseling standpoint to get your budget where you'd like it to be, to get your debt level where you'd like it to be, so that you can, because I think sometimes those are the barriers that prevent people from getting to the place where they can start thinking about retirement planning and investing, and taking some of those forward steps in their financial goals. That sometimes there's just limiting factors that are holding them back, and I think that's where the counseling piece can come um, in terms of what a financial planner is doing with their clients, or if they're looking to reach demographics, people of a certain income level that may not be at the level that they typically deal with.
Yeah, so I think one example that I can think of, obviously, this particular practice doesn't have the financial counseling or coaching as part of their service, but I can think that particular practice may be very good fit. For example, so this is a practice that primarily working with a local credit union bank. And so it's a RIA, fee-based services organization. And they predominantly, this particular credit union bank predominantly servicing middle and low income family. So I could only imagine that if that's the situation, having a financial counseling or coaching sessions, and that probably will go a very long way in terms of helping your clients, letting them know that they could trust you, and then along the way that you can actually help them build wealth as well. So I can see that there's a possibility for a certain type of firms, if that's the client type that they are going after. Would you be able to show us your website in terms of where people could find more information, if what path they should actually take in terms of preparations? I know that at CLU we are going to offer that financial counseling class, which then will prepare them to take the exam as well. So would you mind to share the screen so then we can actually see where to find the information?
Sure, I will be happy to do that. So hopefully you guys can see my screen. Please
Yes.
try to ignore all of the open windows up at the top. But here's our homepage. You can learn all about the organization, by perusing the website. The AFC designation has been around since 1993. So it is well established, and it is also accredited by the NCCA, which is the same organization that the CFP is accredited by. So we are held to the highest standard in the way that we are running the program. Oh, thanks. I saw you just put that in the chat. So one of where I would kind of sort of direct folks is to the certification tab, and then you can go down to accredited financial counselor. So from here, we have some data points and information about the AFC core competencies. So these are the areas that an AFC needs to be well versed in, and these are the areas that they are tested on when it comes time to take the exam. So these first two competencies, as I mentioned, it's over 20% of the test on those counseling skills. And then the other ones probably look pretty familiar for those who might be CFPs and are seeing this. So looking at some of the insurance, taxes, risk, investment fundamentals, retirement estate planning. But there's a focus with the AFC that we haven't really talked about too specifically yet, and that's on credit and debt. So there's a pretty high, actually, it's one of the highest, these percentages here are related to how much of that category is taken up on the is represented on the exam. And so credit and debt is a big portion. So I think this is kind of good to know if you're considering pursuing certification, kind of what to expect. As you kind of go down, I can spend a little time talking about the pathways. So these are the different pathways that we have right now. Self-paced study, as I mentioned, is the most common. And then we have, I already mentioned the professional designation challenge pathway for those who might be have a CFP or other recognized designation. We have the financial education challenge, which could be for someone who has university level education, but their university is not part of our registered education programs, which are listed here for the university program. So we also have a few distance learning programs. One of them is for credit and one of them is not for college credit. And those are 100% online, and the individuals who go through those aren't required to matriculate into those institutions. So kind of for somebody who's wanting to get the education in a more formal way, but they don't want to matriculate into a college or university. So there's a lot of different ways. We try to make it broad so that we can meet you where you're at, wherever you might be in terms of your background. My pathway was self-paced study, since as you mentioned, my educational background isn't in this field. I was well prepared with my human services background for the counseling stuff, but the personal finance was entirely new to me. So that was my biggest hurdle. So once you select a pathway and register, there's a 3-year deadline. Some people, depending on their experience coming into the program, can complete much quicker than that 3 years. Some people, like me, I took my time. I had a full-time job. I was going back to school. I was really taking my time and enjoying the process and absorbing it as much as I could. And so I wasn't in too big of a hurry. I know some people are on more of a timeline if their employer has paid for them to go through the AFC and they need them to get it by a certain point. So some people have a stricter timeline. At my office in particular, we had 3 or 4 AFCs on staff already. So they were not pressuring me. I did it because I wanted to do it. At my base after we left Germany, I was the only AFC on staff. So for the government world, for working on a military installation, whether you're a DoD employee like I was, or a contractor, there are definitely a large number of AFCs who are working as government contractors. Having the designation, having someone at every military installation who is certified is actually a requirement. So sometimes there can be more pressure to really buckle down and move through and get the certification as quickly as possible. But it can definitely make you marketable if you're interested in serving that that community that I served for a good portion of my career.
I know that I know quite a bit of CFP who's also AFC that has military as a niche. And so that definitely does help in terms of helping their clients. I wanted to circle back in terms of the counseling skill and the debt portion. Um, One of the things that I found, at least in my career so far, that working with clients that I, in the past, have felt like I did not have enough debt knowledge. Not that I don't know how to borrow money, it's just that I don't know how to approach clients in terms of weighing in of how much you should take the debt, and kind of considering the entire risks portfolio around it. And when I was crafting the syllabus for this financial counseling course that we are about to develop, there was a handbook which you recommended us to have. It's a whole handbook about debt. And I was shocked. I looked into it, and surprising enough that this year, I don't know about anybody else because I work strictly with business owners. Um, this year's topic is all about debt. I'm so glad that I read a portion of the book because that was the conversation, because they need to determine if their business should take that payroll protection program. And if so, how much should they take? And should they actually apply for the disaster loan? And so a lot of those are not necessarily in the equation of financial planning per se, but if we are doing a good job of comprehensively looking at, or holistically looking at the client's financial welfare, debt is actually a pretty important portion, especially for someone who is in the business and going through this very strange pandemic. But that doesn't necessarily mean that only business owners needs that. They are clients who work for somebody who might potentially need advice surrounding about the line of credits, things like that. I think a lot of times that this is a missed opportunity that I see. All CFP could benefit from it, not to mention about a good counseling skill, if you will.
Yeah, I think years like this one show us that anything can happen. And I was actually doing a webinar recently with a university. I was talking to some of their students, and the professor had said, she, back in 2008, she had been working as a financial planner, and she had clients who they went from a more of a planning focus, and when everything was playing out, circumstances beyond everyone's control, they shifted pretty quickly to more of a counseling focus and trying to work through some of those unexpected challenges. And I think situations like 2008, situations like 2020 show us that any of us could find ourselves in an unexpected place with, you know, whatever it is that might be going on in the world. And so as professionals, it's nice if we can be able to meet clients where they're at and shift and support them in whatever it is that might be going on. So
Right.
yeah.
And when I first saw the components that has been tested on, I am just very glad to see that that is part of those components. It's not something that we often talk about in the financial planning curriculum, but it's needed, because if you use well, it could potentially increase the wealth in the long run. If it's not used well, then it's really a missed opportunity for that. So thank you so much for showing us on your website. What I'm going to do is swing back to my slides. Bear with me.
Yeah, credit and debt was always one of my favorite topics when I was working with clients, just in direct service. I always enjoyed talking about the components of credit scores and doing credit report reviews. And it was just one of my favorite areas. So
So regarding about what we talked for a long time regarding about AFC and coaching skill, counseling skill, so on and so forth. If there's one advice that you could give our students or our alumni, what would that be in terms of counseling and coaching?
wow, that's a tough one. I would say follow your heart and what you want to do. If you have a heart for helping people, this could be something to explore, and a way for you to combine your already established talent and interest in personal finance with something else that you might be, very good at, and be able to kind of merge the two. Um, so I would say follow your heart, uh, look for opportunities to grow, and get connected. So see how you might be able to expand your network, whether that's through AFC certification, or maybe, starting out by becoming an AFCPE member. We have a great network of professionals who are working in a number of different areas. So I think networking and connecting with people across the financial spectrum. Sandra Davis, I love her terminology for it being the continuum of care. I love that. There are AFCPE members and certified professionals working in so many different arenas. So maybe if certification is something you're interested in, don't delay. You never know, when it could benefit you. Otherwise, membership is a great opportunity to expand your network, build your career, get connected. We do monthly webinars on a number of personal finance topics, so it's all designed to just help people become more well-rounded professionals, and um, have that holistic approach towards working with people.
Well, thank you so much, Sheena, for such a wonderful session today. And let me just switch to the next page. So thank you very much for
Thank
that. We're
you.
so glad to have you in our today's Next Gen Mentoring Forum. And thank you for California Lutheran University School of Management Financial Planning Program for sponsoring today's Next Gen Mentoring Forum. At California Lutheran University School of Management, we offer MBA in financial planning, helps financial advisors pursue a leadership position or grow their financial planning practice by deploying advanced financial planning skills, effective client communication, counseling, just like what we were talking about today, streamlined practice management, as well as leveraging fintech. Please sign up for our info session for more information. Our next webinar, I will be interviewing Dr. Darlene Barbera on October 28th, 1 p.m. about how to enhance a diverse environment to grow your practice. And thank you all for attending, and we'll see you in the Next Gen Mentoring Forum. And thank you, Sheena, as well. Take care.
Thank you.